some of the kitchen crew. I'm sure it's willing in here. I apologize for the littles today. Last minute, Jenny's had hair just come in from everywhere, so she's having to work. She'll be working till probably 9 o'clock, and since she can't do nothing because of May, so a little crazy. So I apologize to y'all who have littles. I think where's Daniel at? Is he coming? Oh, okay. I was like, man, that's me. I wasn't late, but I was on time today. Was you able to get that? Ooh, yeah. We might have to deal. We're trying to work some kinks out tonight because we've switched over to the new soundboard. So having to do some readjusting. But was you able to get that video uploaded or that audio? Sweet, sweet. Trying to wait on Big Daniel before we got started. Anybody got any prayer requests before we get started? Remember, Dad, he mows his yard. He does a little bit at a time. Yesterday, I guess he decided he won't mow the whole yard. And it's probably close to, probably acre and a half, 2 acres, and he's out there mowing the whole yard and said he might have overdosed himself, is what Mama said. I think she meant overdone. But when I first read it, I'm like, overdone it. Yeah. Well, she followed up, he mowed the whole yard. I was like, yeah, he's paying for that. But yeah, so for sure remember him. Anybody else have any prayer requests tonight before we unspoken? Sure, absolutely. Candy had texted me earlier today too. She's got an appointment. Thank you. She's got an appointment tomorrow for her. I think have a hip checked or something. So remember her. It's all right. May we got. I think her surgery's in the morning at 7:30. What time her surgery is? So y'all would remember her. When did you sneak in? Like a kid, man. I never even seen you. Yeah. So remember May. Anybody else? Right. Let's definitely remember him in prayer. Anybody else? Keep nobody out. That's everybody. Daniel. Corey. He needs more in prayer. But I'll request prayer for him. But we'll talk about that later. Yeah, my brother-in-law, Corey. Anybody else? Just remember all the kids going to school, parents that are still at home, like the Joneses. That's always tough till you get it kind of used to it and under your belt. And, I don't know if you get used to it. I've had, from Bryson to Mia to Rayleigh's been gone now for, well, Rayleigh, I guess 2 years, almost 2.5, somewhere in that range. And you don't get used to it. You don't get used to it, when they're not there to, I mean, I know they're just down the road, but you don't get used to it, right, Gavin? He's just got married. I wish we could have been there. I bet he cried more on that day than he has his whole life. Anybody else? No one else? All right. Father, we come to you tonight. We're so thankful that you've allowed us to gather out one more time. We're thankful for each and every one that's took time out of their day, Lord, to come and discuss and talk about and learn about you and worship you. Father, there's nothing we can do, Lord, that is good that you're not part of, Father. Everything that is good about us is the you inside us. Father, we just trust that the prayer requests mentioned, the unspoken. Father, we know you know the needs. Father, we know that you're more than able to reach them and touch them. And Father, we just trust that you will continue to bless the endeavors of the church. Father, let us always be your mouthpiece. Let our feet be your feet, no matter what we do or where we go. Father, we just trust that tonight will be a great great small group night, Lord, and that you would just deal with us and work with us. And Father, we ask you all this in the name of Jesus. Amen. All right, so I think most everyone was here last Wednesday. We got a few that are here tonight that wasn't here last Wednesday. Uh, Again, I apologize for the little small groups. As the last minute, Jenny's like, I just no way I can make it. So, uh, but those that were here, who I went home and listened to, not Steve Harvey. He tried to stump me before we ever got started. He said, we gonna talk about Steve Harvey tonight?" Who all got to go home and listen to the Paul Harvey clip? That everybody, most everybody. All right. Well, for those who didn't, we're gonna play it. So we're gonna listen. If you were here last week, I was trying to get a little more discussion going that we can talk about. So I actually had Dustin and John has got it downloaded so we can listen to it for those who haven't heard it. If you're new, if you wasn't here last week, so during small groups, and I still don't have a clue how in the world we wound up on what we did, but somehow we wound up, and somehow the Paul Harvey clip come out, and so I asked everybody to go home and listen to it, and we'd come back and discuss it tonight. So the clip that we're going to listen to was actually on for those, and it actually amazed me because they call us the old class. The people in here had never heard it, and the ones who didn't even know who Paul Harvey was. So kind of shocked me a little bit, but he was a radio talk host, if y'all have it. Back when I grew up listening to him till he come off the air, replaced by his son. But in 1965 is when the clip that we're going to listen to and discuss. And there's just so much to unbox. That it's just so good in this. If you listen to it, that we may discuss this for a couple weeks, few weeks, I don't know, but may even lead it over into the end of times that Bible study that Kelly lost me for a minute, that Kelly had asked about. So but this clip was 1965, and when you read that, I just want you to keep that in mind. This wasn't yesterday, okay? This wasn't 10 years ago, okay? It was 61 years ago that this was recorded and put on air. But we're gonna listen to it, and then we're gonna break on it a little bit. You got it? We ready? We good? All right, let's do it.
If I were the devil, if I were the devil, if I were the prince of darkness, I'd want to engulf the whole world in darkness, and I'd have a third of its real estate and 4/5 of its population, but I wouldn't be happy until I had seized the ripest apple on the tree, thee. So I'd set about, however necessary, to take over the United States. I'd subvert the churches first. I'd begin with a campaign of whispers. With the wisdom of a serpent, I would whisper to you as I whispered to Eve, do as you please. To the young, I would whisper that the Bible is a myth. I would convince them that man created God instead of the other way around. I would confide that what's bad is good and what's good is square. And the old I would teach to pray after me, Our Father, which art in Washington. And then I'd get organized. I'd educate authors in how to make lurid literature exciting so that anything else would appear dull and uninteresting. I'd threaten TV with dirtier movies and vice versa. I'd peddle narcotics to whom I could. I'd sell alcohol to ladies and gentlemen of distinction. I'd tranquilize the rest with pills. If I were the devil, I'd soon have families at war with themselves, churches at war with themselves, and nations at war with themselves, until each in its turn was consumed. And with promises of higher ratings, I'd have mesmerizing media fanning the flames. If I were the devil, I would encourage schools to refine young intellects, but neglect to discipline emotions. Just let those run wild. Until before you knew it, you'd have to have drug-sniffing dogs and metal detectors at every schoolhouse door. Within a decade, I'd have prisons overflowing, I'd have judges promoting pornography. Soon I could evict God from the courthouse, then from the schoolhouse, and then from the houses of Congress. And in his own churches, I would substitute psychology for religion and deify science. I would lure priests and pastors into misusing boys and girls and church money. If I were the devil, I'd make the symbol of Easter an egg and the symbol of Christmas a bottle. If I were the devil, I'd take from those who have and give to those who wanted until I had killed the incentive of the ambitious. And what'll you bet? I couldn't get whole states to promote gambling as the way to get rich. I would caution against extremes in hard work, in patriotism, in moral conduct. I would convince the young that marriage is old-fashioned, that swinging is more fun, that what you see on TV is the way to be. And thus I could undress you in public, and I could lure you into bed with diseases for which there is no cure. In other words, if I were the devil, I'd just keep right on doing what he's doing. Paul Harvey. Good day.
But I listened to Paul Harvey every time I got in the car with my dad. So you know what? I think the only person in here that, Terry, how old was you in 1965? 9? 9 years old. Anybody else? I think so, but I thought I'd ask. 9 years old. Terry's the only one in here. 1965. I promise you, school systems today, church today, the world today looks nothing like it did in 1965. Nothing. This world school, the schools today doesn't look anything like it did in 1998 when I graduated. Nothing like it did then. Some in here a little older than me. Unfortunately, not enough, but some in here a little older than me. And I'm sure you could probably say the same thing about what happened when, compared to when you graduated high school versus when I graduated high school. It's ever changing. Why is it ever changing? So I love there at the very end, when he said, if I were the devil, I'd just keep doing what I'm doing. And you know what? So facts is, when you listen to that from 1965 and you look at what the world is today, you could almost present a good case that he was the devil, because he knew everything and talked about everything that's going on today. Then, obviously, we know Paul Harvey wasn't the devil, but I'm just saying, when I believe if you listen to him much at all, I know Daniel's listened to more than just that clip because he sent me some of them. But if you listen to him more than anything, he was a very wise man. He was a very spiritual man, and I believe that God truly dealt with him in that speech that he gave. If I were the devil, just because of how accurate that it is today, how accurate that it is. And, some of those who listen to it, if you just now listen to it, I encouraged last week, too, that we was hopefully going to come out and have a what tonight on it. Do y'all remember? A discussion. Yeah. I wasn't the only one doing the talking. So, so tonight, for sure tonight, for me, it's every night. If y'all have any questions in small groups, it's a good time to speak up, talk out, and discuss. But tonight, I really want to break that down on what stood out. I guess we can start it off by looking at what stood out to you. Like what, Kelly? Yeah, I figured, you know what? I thought about you. I listened to it again. Right. Right. And so, and so the clip that she's talking about for those who might not could hear, and I would get a mic so everybody could hear, but then I think nobody would want to speak up. So, if you would, I would gladly pass the mic around for those that want to talk. But, so the clip, and I say that I thought about her just because of conversation she and I have had in the past. I listened to it 2 or 3 times this week myself. But where she was talking about what stood out to her the most was where he was talking about Easter has become the symbol of an egg, and and Christmas, you know, presents, and what people may not understand what true Christmas is about, but there's one thing they understand is you give presents like Christmas. And to be honest with you, the world we live in, they're more about receiving than they are giving. A lot of people, but so if you think about like, so what she's talking about is really who has helped drive that, who has helped drive that Easter is about an egg, not a resurrection, and that Christmas isn't about the present, but it's about presence, or what, let me change that Christmas isn't about his presence, and it's more about presence. And oh yeah, yeah, and so at least during Paul Harvey's times, when he wrote that, they probably still did say Merry Christmas, but like Terry said, we live in a world now that where the political correctness is Happy Holidays or Xmas is on everything. They don't even want to put Christ on billboards. They're afraid to put it in their stores. There's these corporations that won't even allow certain businesses to even decorate for Christmas. And so at the end of the day, what's driving that? Who's allowing it? Yeah, media. Yeah, yeah, the media, the TV. It's what we watch. Right. Yeah. 100%. So when I was growing up, and this is going to apply to some people, and a lot of y'all in here, this ain't going to apply to you. But who in here remembered only having 3, 4 channels? And God forbid if the president was on. You wasn't watching nothing unless you was watching the president. Who remembers the big box TVs that, remote? Yeah, you were the remote. You were the remote. You wasn't just the remote, you were the signal. Move that antenna. Yeah, you move that antenna and you got great signal, and you'd let it go and it'd get fuzzy, and Dad'd be like, hey son, move that again. As soon as you touch it, it's like, just hang on, man, I want to see this part. I got you, Dad. Does this help? Right. Yeah, wrap them in aluminum foil. I mean, yeah. So that's part of what I've been trying to kind of fish for right here is what Kelly just said, is we have become part of this. She said we have become. I'm going to talk about Christians. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. And so right. And so going to what Andy said, and that's exactly what he said, and I can't remember exactly how he said it about, but the churches would get to where they accept anything. I mean, we have I say we. I don't put myself in that crowd. But there's transgender pastors. Let that sink in for a minute. I won't say what denomination. If you know, you know. We allow openly gay stand in the pulpits and pastor your children. Openly. Right. Yeah. So Right. And so if you think about it, back in, as a Christian, in today's world, well, let me back up. 1965, that was very unusual. I mean, I don't even know if transgender existed in the dictionary in 1965. That wasn't cool. It wasn't talked about. You know what I mean? Now, if you're a Christian, you're the outcast. You're the outcast if you're a Christian. So at the end of the day, I 100% believe that we love everybody. I 100% believe that we reach for everybody. I'm 100% in favor and push for that we ought to make everyone feel welcome. But there is a difference in judgment and accountability, okay? And you can hold people accountable to the standards of which we believe and what the Bible was written on and what the Bible represents. It's okay to hold people accountable to this. If it's your thoughts, you probably ought to keep it to yourself. But if it lines up with this, it's called accountability, not judgment. And there's even a lot of Christians, we have a problem with that. We don't like to be held accountable ourselves if we just want to be honest about it. Growing up, when we just had 3-4 channels, who remembered hearing cuss words on the TV? Not me. It didn't exist. It didn't exist. My goodness, all the good cartoons is gone. You will actually hear profanity in cartoons that is intended for your kids. There is movies today that is G-rated for your children that includes and encourages homosexuality, that includes and encourages transgender. There is schools that teach that. There is, of course, I've seen where they were trying to change a policy. Who watches the news? Man, I had to separate myself from the news because I don't care what news channel you listen to. At the end of the day, as far as I'm concerned, they're all garbage. Yeah, they're all no matter what news you watch, if you watch Max, Fox, or CNN, or NBC, or some of them, I'm going to pray more for you than others, but depending on what, they're all trash. At the end of the day, all they are is to turn you against this person here. I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't care if you're white. I don't care if you're Hispanic. I don't care if you're black. I don't care if you're gay. I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican or don't have a clue what you are. I don't care. You know what concerns me? Have you ever been introduced to a man named Jesus? That's all I care about. You believe different than I do? Don't care. You believe religiously different than me? Don't care. I do not care. You don't believe that this is sin, but I do? I don't care. That's on you. I don't care, really. I'm not going to argue with you, even if this condemns it and you're trying to condone it. I don't care. You got to give an account of that, not me. But what I do care about is, as a country, we have forgot how to love one another. We have forgot how to love the ones that we sit next to in the sanctuary. Most religions have forgot how to love the ones who sit in another sanctuary across the street because they sit across the street and not with them. I've been ridiculed a lot for that in my life, especially since I started Crossroads. Because that's what he was, churches against churches. A lot of the reason that the world is become what it's become is, like he said, if I were the devil, I'd keep doing what I'm doing, is to turn each other against each other. You know how to wreak havoc in a family? Turn mom and dad against each other. It's the quickest way to do it. If mom and dad can not be on the same page, the whole family will be in turmoil. And you're seeing that on a regular basis. We see that on a regular basis. So many different ones here lately that it seems like that I've had to talk to that kind of comes around that of, mom and dad can't see eye to eye. And then, now the kids are kind of acting out or it's caused trouble in kids. And then I'm just like, wait a minute, time out. Just press pause. Let's back up and let's look at the bigger picture. What's the home life look like? I mean, I'll be honest with you. If you've got young kids that drop F-bombs, they've probably heard that at home. They probably heard that at your house. They take for granted, hey, I dropped quite a few F-bombs in my life. I was wild, I was crazy, I was popular, I thought I had to do that kind of stuff. But I can guarantee you one thing, I did not learn that in my house. My dad, y'all know I look up to him, I talk about my dad a lot. And I've heard my dad questionably say two words that depend on who you talk to, whether they're cuss words or dirty words or whatever you want to call them, depending on who you talk to, would say, that wasn't a cuss word. But I heard him say two words he wouldn't normally say twice in his life. And both times he was threatening one of my sister's boyfriends. Each time. I guess he thought we'd fend for ourselves. I don't know. But now you can't turn on. So 6, 8, 10, it didn't matter what age you was when we were kids, your 3, 4 major channels, if you throw Fox in there. It didn't matter what age you was. If you were watching the TV, you could watch. You didn't have to say, oh, y'all going to have to leave the room. You can't turn on regular televised TV with small kids in a room anymore. You have no idea what it's going to show, and you have no idea what it's going to say. And at the end of the day, I believe if more people stood up and took a stand on what we truly believe, the problem is some of that, I think some people still today don't know what they believe. They don't know what's okay and what's not okay because we grew up in a world that has been trying to drive us to accept and be okay with so much. We don't have a clue anymore. Or you got the other crowd that grew up under strict religious beliefs that now don't know how they believe or what they think because they don't know if it's really what they think or what they've always been told. Or they don't know if they believe that because they've always been told that that's right, or if God's really trying to show them something. I mean, we live in a confused world. A confused world. And I believe personally, I personally think that where do we turn it around at? Let me ask you, I'll ask that before I turn. I said, where do we turn it around? Where do we not become okay with TV? I mean, used to, if you may have heard, like I said, arguably, whether it's a cuss word or not, I mean, maybe there was a word or two that was slipped here and there, maybe on local TV when I was a kid. But you can watch a regular televised Channel 6, Channel 8, Channel 10 show that will say GD like it's saying hello. Insinuate the most ungodly things you could ever think of. And it got, so where do we turn it around? Let me ask, where do we turn it around? Number one thing is in your own home. Right. Right. And so, I felt like I was watching TV with Jesus, my dad. I was almost more scared of my dad than I was Jesus growing up. But my dad, both Julie and Kelly, I said, where do we change this at? She said, our homes. Our homes. Which brings me to another, like I said, we might discuss on this for a while. And I am going to get, like I said, we're going to get into some biblical tying in when all this is done. But it starts at home. That's where it starts. You know what? Are you sure? Because I thought we lived in a world where we blamed teachers for the way our kids act. I thought it was the teacher's fault. Is it not? I mean, it's what they say on TV. What'd you say? Yeah. But that's what media wants us to believe, right? It's a teacher. It's bad teachers. It's, like I said, we can argue all day long, but that's what they blame it on. And you know what? I'm just going to, you'll be amazed at how many times people has come to me and say, hey, my son, my daughter's doing this. I need you to talk to them. I need you to help me fix this. Time out. Time out. I'm here to help. I'm here to help. But how did we get to right here? When we constantly put the fix on someone else, or if we constantly put the blame on someone else, nothing ever gets fixed. Nothing ever gets fixed. Y'all know I do this from time to time. I leave a piece of trash laying in the floor. And I sit and watch that piece of trash. I ain't talking about at my house. I'm talking about right here. And I watch that piece of trash. And I would never call you out, but you'd be amazed at how many people step over that trash and walk by that trash. You know why? We're waiting on somebody else to pick it up. And a lot of our kids, and not all of our kids, and I ain't saying your kids, I mean, for the most part, I believe I know of most of everybody's kids in here, and they seem to be tremendous kids. But a lot of the world today is waiting on somebody else to do it. They're waiting on somebody else. You don't teach your kid, if you don't teach your kid respect, don't expect them to go to school and respect people. But then don't get mad when they don't. If you don't teach if we don't teach our kids to mind and to listen and to learn, and then why are we so surprised when the phone rings off the hook when they start school? Because it starts at home. It starts at home. Now, you don't have to raise your hand, but I'll tell you right now, I grew up and I went totally left field from what my daddy taught me. Done things that my dad, if he knew today, there's things I've done in my life I still don't tell him. I'm still afraid I get a whooping. And I learned that the hard way a long time ago, telling him something I'd done. I mean, you know what? I mean, it's under the blood and in the past. No, it wasn't as far as Daddy was concerned. It wasn't either. It wasn't either. So we've all done that, but the Bible does say, raise up a child in the way it should go. That's on us. That's on us. Say, well, I done the best I could, and my son or my daughter's this and it's that. That's okay. You can't keep beating yourself up if you raised them right. The difference is if, you know what, most parents who beat themselves up over what their kids are doing or not doing are parents who really ought to be beating themselves up. Because it is our fault that we didn't. If you raised them right and you taught them right, the Bible said raise them up in the way they should go, and when they are old, it shall not depart from them. It what? The way you taught them. Most kids today, the way they talk and the way they act is a learned behavior. Is there anybody else in here, a school teacher besides Mel? Lord, I bet Mel could probably tell you some things that would curl your toes, your toenails, and everything else that could curl. of things that she's seen. Yeah. 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 I mean, but you know what? There's great teachers. Who in here's got some teachers in your life that I'm talking about back in school now? That was like a mother and father to you. But I've still got coaches and teachers today that reach out to me. I just want to let you know I'm proud of you. And you know what? It's hard to be a good teacher anymore. Because them coaches and teachers I'm talking about has pinned me in a corner and climbed me like a tree. Like I was their kid. Because they loved me and they cared for me. And nowadays, everybody, we live in such an I'm offended world that it's hard. Yeah. And turn a blind eye to it. Yep. Yeah. And we turn a blind eye to what's going on around us. Who in here has got some family members that either battles or has battled drug addictions? Almost everybody in this room. How many people didn't see it and realize it until they were full-blown addicts? But when you think about it and you look back, you're like, I should have knew that. I should have picked up on that. You know why you didn't? You know, if I were the devil, you know what I'd do? I'd do what he's doing. I'd make you busy. I'd make you busy. At the end of the day, that's all the devil's doing, is making you busy. Making you think you got to work more because you need more money. Making us think that we've got to do this and that for our kids because if we don't, they don't think we're going to love them. And y'all know my kids play travel sports. Most kids in here is done with travel sports, so I can get by a little bit lenient now than I used to. No, I know, trust me. But if I was the devil, I'd schedule ball games on Sunday. Because that would get mom and dad and my kids both out of. I'd keep mom and dad and all my kids out of church. That's what I'd do. And I'd make that kid fall in love with that so you felt bad when you didn't do it. That's what I would do. I'd schedule the biggest sports games of the year. I'd schedule them on a church day. And I'd put every filth that I could in a commercial. What I'd do. That's what he's doing. You know, if I was the devil, I'd make you feel uncomfortable to even talk about this in your church. I debated this week on doing it. I ain't going to lie to you. I thought, Lord, there's a lot to unpack in there. I don't really know if it's going to offend people or not. Most of you come tonight knowing what we're going to talk about. But if I was the devil, I'd make you think that church wasn't important. Just like he's done. I know some people in my life right now that are very close to me that are awesome people, have seen them work in the church, have seen them volunteer in the church, have seen them pour their hearts out for God in the church, that has got themselves convinced they don't need church. As long as they talk to the Lord, everything's okay. As long as they got a relationship with God, why do I need to go to church? We've got to a place in the world where nothing is wrong. And when we encounter a church or if we encounter a Christian that wants to talk about it, all of a sudden we're offended and we're hurt. and we're upset. Or we just feel super weird. Anybody ever have those weird conversations with people? I'm talking about church stuff. And I'm just like, man, I'm afraid to say what I really believe because I don't want to offend them. So I'll be honest with you. I've offended a lot of people because y'all know it's hard for me to keep my mouth shut. But I did change it. I've offended some people, but I don't say, well, here's what I think. If it's what I think, I'd rather not tell you. And if it is what I think, I make sure you clearly know, well, here's what I think. But if it's something that I know, I say, well, wait a minute. Let's just, you know what? I got a better one. I was just going to randomly turn to something. But the preacher, the way I talk don't bother me. Well, okay, let's see if it bothers you when you leave here tonight. And say it don't bother me. I think I ought to be able to talk like that. I think I ought to be able to say those words, and I think people shouldn't be offended because that's who I am. Say, that's how I used to feel. I grew up a pastor's kid. I had a mouth of a sailor, cussed up a storm. I mean, I could make you blush and you didn't even know the Lord. That's who I was. Well, if somebody comes to me and says, well, I think it's okay for me to talk like this. I think it's okay for me. It's in my home. If I want to say that, yeah, well, it's in your kids now. So now what do you want to say about that? So let's just go back and see who wants to see. We just want to know what the Word of God says, right? So don't let me tell you what I think. Let's just look at God's book and let's see what God's book says. It'd be a great way to do it, right? So Ephesians 4:29. Ephesians 4, verse 29. Because I'll just be honest with you, if there's one thing as Christians, you know what? I love the conversations that I have with Christians that cuss every other breath. Look, I don't think this was anonymous, and some of y'all are going to know what I'm talking about when I say what I'm about to say. I saw a post on Facebook this week. It was from somebody in Union County. And she was going off at a member at her church for sitting in her seat. Anybody else see that besides me? I know my sister and my brother-in-law did because they called and said something to me about it. It's in Union County Speaks Out 2.0 or something. She was complaining, didn't say the name of the church, but was complaining that I always sit in that seat. I come in, that person was in my seat. I asked them to move out of my seat. They wouldn't move out of my seat. I ended up leaving church. And now that's just the short and skinny of what it said. But you know what I didn't repeat? 16 F-bombs in the post. 16 F-bombs in the post. Of talking about the reason she is upset because she couldn't worship that Sunday morning the way she felt like she could worship because she couldn't sit in the seat that she wanted to sit in because she didn't like to sit around people, and blamed it on, and I'm not saying she is or she isn't, but blamed it on a health issue. A health issue that's easy. You know what? If you took your kids to the doctor and had them tested for ADHD, every kid's ADHD. None of them know how to mind. Do you teach them how to mind? None of them know how to listen. Do you teach them how to listen? Blamed it on everything under the sun, but 16 F-bombs. So what did Ephesians 4:29? Let no, is that what, does y'all's Bible say no? Or does it say when you're mad, it's okay to say corrupt communication? Is that what it says in your book? Because in my book, it don't. Does it say it's okay if you're with your guy friends and not mixed company? I'm just making sure nobody else's Bible reads different than mine. Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers. Julie said it. My mama said, if you wouldn't watch that with Jesus, you probably shouldn't be watching it. If you wouldn't call somebody that in front of Jesus, you probably shouldn't call them that. And what we don't even stop to think to realize is every time we do it, you know what? Our friends from church may not know it's us. Our friends from church, you know, and I say this because I can tell you from experience, I would go to church, and because I was the pastor's son, they thought I was as holy as Dad. The only thing holy about me was my jeans, socks, and if you've been to a women's group, that's all I'll say. Some of you know and some of you may not know. That was embarrassing, by the way. Crystal knows, obviously. Wasn't nothing holy about me. I went to church, I put on a good show. I could raise my hands when everybody else raised their hand. I stood when everybody else stood. I listened. Man, I left there and was, Lord, have mercy. And you know what? I acted different in front of said crowd. But then when I got over with this crowd, I was a total different guy. And I was thinking I was helping myself because I wasn't doing it in front of the church people. While the whole time, I would respect here because, you know what? Jesus is watching me over here. But over here, I thought he got blind all of a sudden. I'd get over here with this crowd, and I think all of a sudden Jesus couldn't see me no more. And I think it's okay to do it because nobody from church knows I'm doing it. So I can go to church and I can put on a good show and I can put on a good act, and all is well. But the world we live in today, there's churches, and again, I would never mention any said churches. I'd appreciate it if you didn't, if you felt like blurting one out. That has got to a point to where sin don't exist no more. Sin don't exist. There's one thing I 100% believe, and I believe this, and he said it in Romans, whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. I believe that 100%. You know what else I believe 100%? I don't believe that water baptism is 100%, that a water baptism is necessary to go to heaven. Don't change your opinion of me yet. I ain't got there. I hadn't got there yet. I don't believe that it is 100% necessary for you to go to church to go to heaven. I don't believe it's 100% necessary for you to have good works to go to heaven. Until. Whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved will work for all of those who call upon the Lord who never had any other opportunity. I believe that. But you know what I also believe? I believe that once you call upon the Lord, that water baptism now all of a sudden becomes 100% necessary for you to go to heaven. I don't believe it until opportunity is presented. Does it make sense? I don't need to be water baptized. I just need to be saved. Amen? Well, then once I'm saved and I'm truly saved, now I have a reason that I need to be baptized. I love it when you talk about that. People say, well, I don't think you have to be baptized. The thief on the cross wasn't baptized. If he could have come off of that cross, I promise you he would have been baptized. If he could have come off that cross, I promise you, I believe 100% that he would have followed Jesus the rest of his life. He didn't have opportunity. But you can't make me believe under one, you could preach to me till you die, I die, and the world no longer exists, that he didn't go to heaven because he wasn't baptized. But Jesus said, this day thou shalt be with me in paradise. But I believe as a Christian, once you accept Jesus Christ and you begin to grow in Jesus Christ, an opportunity is there that you as a Christian ought to be baptized. Why do I believe that? Because Jesus said when he went to John, we talking about Jesus now. We ain't talking about just anybody. Jesus went to John and he said, I have need that you suffer me, that you baptize me. Why? Because he set an example for you and I. Do we believe Jesus set an example for us? All of us believe that. Who did no sin. Preacher, I don't know, I can't go a day without sinning. Maybe we need to pray a little more. I'll just be honest with you. If you want a pastor who believes that you sin every day, I probably ain't a good pastor for you. Because I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I believe once you truly become saved and you truly become to love the Lord and know the Lord, and you're striving to be closer to the Lord, you will work harder not to sin every day. I'm not going to say you won't. Paul said we've all sinned and come short of the glory of God. Paul said that he felt the rankest amongst all sinners. But even when Paul was killing out the church and killing Christians, he was doing it in the name of right. You realize that? He wasn't wrong in doing what he was doing. Was it wrong? 100%. But was it wrong in how he was doing it? No, it wasn't. But you know the difference? When Jesus come into his life, I have to be careful. I won't preach here in a minute. When Jesus come into his life, it changed Paul's whole life. You know what it truly changed? It changed Paul's desires. It changed Paul's whole mindset of what he was doing to what he wanted to become. And a lot of Christians who say, well, I've been saved, but still do the same things they've always done, talk the way they've always talked, go the places they've always went to. I'm still looking, trying to find where'd you get saved from? He's a gnat, drive me crazy. What did you get saved from? How can we believe that we've ever been saved if we've never had a change? You know how? TV. Man, this hurts to say it. Church. Pastors. Christians. You know why? Because it's more about that seat being filled. I know church, I got pastors' friends scared to death to preach on sin. Scared to death of it. Ask them why. They said, well, I'm afraid my church people quit coming. Don't you want to be close to the Lord? I don't know about you, but I want to be as close to him as I can possibly get. And that's why sometimes the Lord give me a sermon and I have to go find myself somewhere to pray. I'm like, wait a minute, Lord, look, I've got to repent before I can preach it because I'm guilty. I'm guilty. And I need to make sure things is right with me and you before I can go preach it that other people may be right. Why? Because Paul said, though the outward man perish, the inward man is renewed day by day. Every day we ought to be striving harder to be more like Jesus, to look more like Jesus, sound more like Jesus, love more like Jesus, and stand firm on what we believe like Jesus. You don't have to show me your hand. Have you ever compromised your beliefs for the sake of an argument? I'm guilty. I wouldn't ask you to do it, but I'm guilty. Would compromise my beliefs for sake of an argument. Why? Because that's not the world we live in. You shouldn't talk about what you truly believe. We live in a world that wants you to only talk about what they tell you it's okay to talk about. Why? Because that's the world we live in. We live in a world that if the right judge makes a ruling on it, it's gospel to all. I don't care how many judges rule on some things, I'll never accept it because the Word of God stands against it. And I'll never accept it. So what do we do? What do we do in those conditions? And I ain't got Jenny here tonight, but I'll probably get a text here in a minute. But shut up. Let your people go. I get them from her every now and again on Wednesdays. But if we're not careful, we become part of the problem, even though we don't believe what's going on, because we become afraid to stand up for what we truly believe in. Why? There's people losing jobs all over the country that stood up for what they believed in. There's people, especially in foreign lands, every day that are still being beheaded, beaten, all because they believe in a man named Jesus. We live in a country, we've got to a point that we're afraid to stand up for what we believe in a man named Jesus and just say, no, I'm not going to do it. Or no, I'm not going to accept it. And as some parents has got to a place that we've gotten scared to even stand up to our own children. We've gotten scared to truly explain why our children, of why it's wrong, because of the backlash we might get from notes sent home from a teacher or friends. A lot of the reason, Paul Harvey, 1965, who prayed in school? Who prayed in school? Who prayed in school? Who graduated after 98? 98. Was you still praying in school? Was you still praying at ball games? Ball games, but not at school. 2010, where'd you go to school? That's the difference. That's the difference. A county school. In a rural county school. Did the whole school do it or just a group? That's the other difference. When I grew up, who remembers doing the Pledge of Allegiance in classrooms? You still do that today? Wow, that's awesome. I love that. Still do a moment of silence. They do that at ball games now because they're afraid to pray. Together, so from mom and dad's, students can, just not teachers. Yeah. So some courthouses, there was a different rule, and some courthouses has put 10 Commandments back in there. But I think on that Paul Harvey, he talked about if I was the devil, I'd take 10 Commandments out of the courthouses. 1965, they done it in what, mid-2000s? Yeah, a moment of silence. Yeah. Yeah, because you can't pray at a ball game no more. Some. I've been to some and been floored because they did pray, and I was just like, wow, thank God. And I'll be honest with you, unless they've changed it in the last couple of years, if you go to a Jefferson County football game, you're going to hear a prayer. And I'm proud of that because that's where I went to school. Union County prays. Yeah, afterwards. Yeah. So there's some, but think about this. How long did we go silent without it? We can be part of the change. We can be part of the change. The reason that, one lady, I don't remember her name, maybe some of y'all do, but one lady got prayer took out of school. One lady. That's where it started. Yeah, but that's where it's one lady took it out, though. One lady. Imagine if all Christians would have band together. Because it's not, if it's not politically correct, it's not correct, right? That's the world we live in. I don't mean that's the way it's got to be or that's the way it is, but that's the world we live in. If it's not politically correct, we shouldn't say it. We shouldn't even believe it. Really and truly, if they have their way about it, they wouldn't even have you think it. Yeah, yeah. Listen, the more God that our government takes out of government, the worse your government's going to get. That's just, y'all know I don't get into politics. That's just common sense. I'm not a political pastor. I can be. If you want to know what I think, ask me. But I won't do it from up here. Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's all so the number one thing to do, which is what is happening in our government and what is happening, none of us are probably going to remember this, some of us to a certain extent, because most of us has grew up in rural counties. But there was a time that this country relied on each other. They relied on their friends. They relied on their church friends. You know what? If you had a problem with your roof, the whole church had a problem with their roof. It was called your roof. If you were hungry, the whole church was hungry, and they figured out how to change that to make you not hungry. If you were hurting, the whole church hurt. Now, this is a true story. I won't mention any names, but this is an honest God true story. I know a husband and wife making pretty good money, doing pretty good. Found out they was going to lose her food stamps. She quit her job. She quit her job because she would rather depend on the government that then tells you what you can and cannot do in order to receive that, instead of working and making a living for her and her family. That's a true story. Which one? Yeah. Yeah, kill the ambition. Yeah. Oh, yeah. How many people's got friends that complain about having no job that don't go fill out no applications? Got any of them friends? I know some of them. I talked to a girl today. I feel for this girl, man. My heart, since the first time I met her, went out to this. She's had a troubled life. She works at one of the stores I was at today. And even Matt really tried to pour into her and really tried to love on her. And she said, I hate this job. I said, what are you doing to change it? I said, what do you want to do? I don't know what I want to do. And I said, well, why do you keep showing up here for then? He said, you ever see yourself working toward being a general manager? No, I don't want that. I said, why are you wasting your time? What are you doing? You hate this place. You never intend on growing in the company. What do you intend on doing in life? You still live at home? No, I live with my boyfriend. He's all right sometimes. I said, honey, at what point are you going to take your life under control? You need to set some goals. You can't just go through life not knowing what you're going to do tomorrow. I said, if you ain't going to work here, find you somewhere to go. Find you somewhere to go that you can grow. Well, why? Because ambition, how many of y'all were told, I've got a hug, they even put on the screen, Dustin put on the screen back there, check the time. Yeah, check the time. My wife texts you or something? She didn't text me. But you think about it, who in here had a dad like mine that walked by and said, go mow the yard? What happened if you didn't mow the yard? Couldn't wear shorts because daddy probably went to jail. Yeah, think about this now. We live in a world, you tell your kids to go mow the yard, and you know what most parents do? They wind up mowing the yard. Listen, But then we complain. Then we complain when they get older and they won't do nothing. And the best thing to do is go stand in the mirror and say, you know what, I let them down. I failed them. Because that's the world we live in. Who in here got a mama like my wife who will yank a kid up in the middle of the grocery store and give it a reason to cry all the way to the car? And me over here like, today's the day. They're going to pick her up and they're going to take me with them too for sitting here letting it happen. That's my kid. And I'll discipline my kid the way I see fit as long as it ain't abuse. You know what? My dad never once abused me, but he gave me a lot of reasons to not want to do it again. I was just stupid and done it again. But eventually I quit. Yeah. There's no so at the end of the day, I've got to shut up. At the end of the day, here's what I think one of the biggest problems is for us. We have become afraid to hold people accountable. Not just ourselves, but people. We've become afraid to hold people accountable. And the ones we blame it on and hold accountable are normally the wrong ones. I can say there is still good teachers that exist. And I know that. I'm only saying it, because she is here. But every one of my kids had Melody Jones before she come to Crossroads. I didn't meet her through Crossroads. She was a teacher to my 3 adult kids. And they all loved her. But she wasn't easy on them. And they loved her for it. They're still good parents. They're still good teachers. They're still good churches. They're still good Christians. Our biggest question to ask is, are we one of them? Are we one of them? Or do our friends away from church think something different about us? Because the number one thing, all I have to do is convince you that it's okay for you to do what you're doing before you convince yourself it's okay. Birds of a feather flock together. Lie with dogs, wake up with fleas. You are the company you keep. I never understood that. Dad said, you're the company you keep. I was like, what are you talking about? Until I realized I was everything they were. But all I have to do is convince you it's okay. Yeah. Yeah, right side of the fence. Can't straddle the fence, right? There's a bunch of, what'd you say? Yeah, that's the most deadly place to be. God said, I'd rather be hot or cold. Lukewarm, I'll spew you out. You know why he said that? Does anybody know? Back in those days, and I'm going to be quiet, I promise you. Man, my wife was here, I'd be in so much trouble. Yeah. So if the reason why back in the days that the Bible was written, and he's talking about he'd rather be hot or cold than lukewarm. If the water was cold, it was typically okay to drink. If the water was hot, it was okay to drink because then it had boiled out the impurities. But if it was lukewarm, because of the water the way it was and how they had to get water and they'd carry water and it wouldn't keep. It wouldn't keep. It would get stale and stagnant and it would get diseases and it would get, stuff in it. So he said if somebody grabbed a drink of water that was lukewarm, they would spit it out because that's where bacteria lived. That's where bacteria lived. That's where corruption lived. Well, then God said to them, I would rather you be hot or cold, because if you're lukewarm, I'm going to spew you out of my mouth. If you're in between to where you're listening to this little devil on this shoulder, but you're trying to listen to the little angel in this ear, and you're just kind of trying to appease us both, he said, I'm going to spew you out, because you're neither hot nor cold. You'd be better if you're one or the other, but it's that lukewarm or hypocrite. That is one way, one place, and another way, another place. So next week, we're going to biblically get into a little more of what Paul Harvey said that he would bring about, and we're going to tie some of that into the end of times. Okay? Who believes we're living in the end of times? I do. You know how long the end of times has been preached? Lord, I've got to be quiet. Our whole lives. You know when the end of the world, when the end of times begin to be preached? And we'll show it since the day Jesus resurrected from the grave. Since that day, the end of times has been preached. You know the difference in that day and this day? Oh man, about to get myself in trouble. Somebody call my wife before I go home, make sure it's okay. I ain't got a hat to throw in the door. You know how I know? A lot of this book, when it was written, was prophecy. A lot of this book was prophecy. A lot of that book that was prophecy is now called the past. Is now called the past. Say, why is that important to us? Because every prophecy that is fulfilled, it's just like reading a natural book. Every page you read, you're one step closer to the end, right? You're one step closer to the end. And then when you close a chapter, you're one step closer into knowing a little bit more about what the end's going to look like. But that's what we got right here. Some of us don't realize it. There was a time that the book of Revelations was all futuristic. And there's a lot of people that are living today that still believes it is still future. But Revelations is now past, present, and future. And one day, the last Christian is going to be saved. One day, the last person are going to give their heart to the Lord. One day, he's going to come back. And he's going to step one foot on the land and the other upon the sea and declare by him that time shall no longer be. But there is things that have to be fulfilled in order for the word of God to be correct before that happens. But how long does it take? Some live a life thinking that, well, and I say some, tell you, let me change that. I used to live my life in a way that I thought, well, I ain't got to worry about the Lord coming back today because I know a little bit about that book. And I know there's still some things that's got to come to pass before he can wrap this up. But he could wrap my life up before I take the next breath. But there's people that are living a life that is just thinks, well, no, I don't think the Lord's coming back anytime. You know what? Maybe it's in our kids' lifetime. Maybe it's in our lifetime. I don't know. But there's one thing that I can guarantee you. We're a lot closer today than we was the day after Jesus resurrected. That I know for sure. But today could be your day. So we're going to dig a little bit deeper into what some of the things he said and show where some of that is coming into fruition, has already passed, and some is still coming. But it's amazing. I mean, this is our roadmap. All right, I've got to be quiet. Anybody got anything? Hey, listen. Thanks for this discussion. And we'll get even a little deeper in it, hopefully, because that's to me, that's more about what small groups is about, is questions and and speaking up and talking and getting to know. So, anybody got anything? What we got to eat today? What you got in there, Candace? You say chicken sandwiches and French fries? All right. In the cafeteria if you want to eat. Thanks for coming. Appreciate y'all being here. Hopefully you enjoyed it as much as I do. I can go for days on it, man. We really did tonight. I'm gonna be in trouble. It don't